Chapter 4. Don't mention breaking up. Chinyue's lips moved, but he did not say anything. His eyes, under the golden frame, showed some depth that he could not understand. He stared at Jianran's back for a few seconds before he turned around and walked to the study. In the past 3 years, Jianran had rented a room to live alone. She was very good at making a few common side dishes. Soon, 2 dishes and a soup were served on the table. Chinyue, it's time to eat. Jianran carefully knocked on the door of the study. She did not hear a reply, and gently pushed the door open. In the study, Chinyue was on the phone, and heard him say, "You handle these things as you see fit. You do not need to report everything to me." After he finished speaking, he hung up the phone. The moment he looked up, his eyes met Jianran's. He asked coldly, "What's the matter? We can eat now." Jianran smiled and did not dare to look back at him. "I will come over immediately." His tone was indifferent, as usual. The 2 of them sat across from each other, eating seriously. Neither of them spoke to break the silence. The atmosphere seemed to be dull for a moment. Jianran moved her lips a few times to find a topic to talk about. After meeting Chinyue's indifferent expression, she swallowed her words back. After the meal, Chinyue took the initiative to ask her to wash the dishes, and Jianran did not refuse. He was willing to share the household chores with her, so why not? From Chinyue's clumsy look, it could be seen that he definitely had never done these things before. But that was also true. How could CEO, who worked in such a large company, do such trivial things like washing dishes? Slap. Jianran heard the sound of porcelain bowls shattering in the kitchen, and immediately got up and walked over. What entered her eyes was Chinyue, holding a bowl in his hand and staring blankly at the broken porcelain pieces on the floor. "Let me do it." Jianran walked over and wanted to take the bowl from Chinyue. "No need. I will do it." Chinyue took Jianran's hand away. His tone did not change. "Chinyue, actually." Jianran met Chinyue's firm gaze and did not continue speaking. She could only nod and leave the kitchen for him to continue. Although the 2 of them were already legal husband and wife, to Jianran, Chinyu was just a man she was not familiar with. She wanted to understand him, understand everything about him, and do her best to be a qualified wife. However, with his identity, could she really get close to him with the idea of marrying him and her back then? Jianran sat down in the living room, picked up the remote control, turned on the television, and randomly chose a news channel. When she looked at the television, she occasionally tilted her head to look in the direction of the kitchen. Through the glass door, she saw Chinyue attentively cleaning the bowls and chopsticks. She secretly sighed in her heart. It turned out that this man could be so handsome when he was washing the dishes. Perhaps Jianran's gaze was too hot. Chinyue suddenly turned his head to look. Their eyes met. Jianran saw the slight coldness in Chinyue's eyes, and then an impeccable polite smile. Jianran's face turned slightly red, and then she politely replied with a faint smile. Jianran then shifted her gaze to the television screen, but her mind was filled with Chinyue. This man was so bold in his work. When he washed the dishes, Ye was so handsome. When would she be able to see his embarrassing side? After tidying up the kitchen, Chinyue returned to the living room and saw Jianran in a daze. He stared at her delicate and pretty face and only spoke after a few seconds. "Jianran!" "Ah!" Chinyue's pleasant voice called out her name. Jianran felt that it was exceptionally pleasant to hear, and for a moment she felt her face heat up. Chinyue sat down on the other side of the sofa. "There are some things that I want to discuss with you." "Okay," Jianran answered. She also wanted to have a good talk with him and take this opportunity to speak clearly. Chinyue's deep gaze swept Jianran up and down before he slowly opened his mouth. "Jianran, today at the company. Public and private are distinct. I understand this. Actually, I also do not want the company's people to talk behind our backs because of our private relationship." Before Chinyue could finish speaking, Jianran interrupted him. She worked hard in this company for 3 years to achieve her current results. She still wanted to rely on her own hard work to continue climbing up. She didn't want to change because of Chinyu. Chinyu's expression was calm. However, an undetectable light flashed in his eyes under his golden glasses. "Regarding the identity of Innovation Technology CEO, I did not mean to hide it from you. Seeing you in such an occasion today, I don't know what you are thinking, so I didn't announce it to the public, but it doesn't mean that I want to hide this matter." "I know." Jianran nodded and said, "To me, work and life are completely different. It's because I don't want to bring my personal life into work." The marriage between her and Chinyue was between the 2 of them. Jianran felt that there was no need to specially announce it to the people in the company. Firstly, she did not want her work to be affected. Secondly, she was not sure how far her marriage with Chinyue could go. Looking at Jianran's firm expression, Chinyu paused and then said, "Did you tell your family about our marriage?" Jianran shook her head and did not want to talk about her family. "I just took over the Innovation Technology. There are some things that I need to take care of personally. If you don't mind, after this busy period of time, I want to go with you to visit father-in-law, mother-in-law," he said with a calm tone, as if he had already expected Jianran to not mention this matter to her family. "No need." Jianran directly refused but felt that this sentence was inappropriate and quickly explained, I have some matters with my family and have not contacted them for a long time. This matter can be discussed later. Home? Every time Jianran thought of this word, Jianran's heart would faintly hurt, making her somewhat unable to breathe. 3 years ago, that home was no longer her home and she would never be able to return. Jianran, Qin Yu called her name in a deep voice and said again, you are no longer alone in the future. You have me. Qin Yue's tone was indifferent, but because his voice was pleasant to the ear, it gave him a different feeling. These words were clearly not words of love, and Jianran's heart was filled with an indescribable feeling. Although she had gritted her teeth and walked over these few years, when she thought of that matter in the dead of the night, she could not help but feel sad and sad. She also silently shed tears. Jianran. After a long silence, Qin Yue opened his mouth again. We are already husband and wife. I sincerely want to live with you for the rest of my life. Jianran did not expect Qin Yue to suddenly say that. She was stunned again. She looked up at him and met his sincere eyes. She also said, I also made up my mind to live with you for the rest of my life. Qin Yue stared at her beautiful face and paused for a few seconds before saying, Then Jianran, can you promise me no matter what happens, you will not easily break up with me? Yes, Jianran nodded heavily and said, I will work hard to be a qualified wife. It was Jianran's heart to not easily suggest breaking up. At this moment, Qin Yu personally said it, which made her feel very at ease. Chapter 5. A considerate newlywed husband. Qin Yue and Jianran looked at each other, once again making the atmosphere awkward because they couldn't find a topic to talk about. Why don't you go and do something first? I also need to take care of some things. Jianran usually had a cheerful personality, but she did not know why. But once she met Qin Yu, she did not know what to do. Okay. Qin Yu nodded, got up and walked to the study. Jianran glanced at him and also went back to the room to prepare the materials needed for tomorrow's work. After being busy for about 2 hours, Jianran turned off the phone and raised her hand to rub the pain between her eyebrows. She got up and went out. She opened the door and saw Qin Yue, who came out of the bathroom. He was wearing a white robe and his short black hair was dripping with water. The expression on his face made people feel very cold. It's getting late, let's go wash up and sleep. His tone was indifferent. After he finished speaking, he did not look at her anymore. He turned around and entered the room. Jianran was at a loss. She felt that he was planning to sleep with her tonight. But she felt that she could not accept him in her heart. Thinking of this, Jianran felt that her heart was beating so fast that it was difficult for her to breathe. After struggling in the bathroom for half an hour, Jianran finally came out of the room. She found a set of long-sleeve pajamas and wrapped herself tightly. When she returned to the room, she did not see Qin Yue's figure and could not help but quietly sigh in relief. But before she could exhale, she saw Qin Yue walk in. He had a faint smell of tobacco on him. She guessed that he had just gone to the balcony to smoke. He did not hide the fact that he wanted to smoke. He was just being considerate and did not smoke in the area that she appeared to be. Go to sleep. Qin Yue first got on the bed and laid on the right side of the bed. He left the left side position to Jianran. Oh, okay. Jianran was so nervous that she stuttered and broke out in cold sweat. She climbed onto the bed from the other side and laid on the left side of Qin Yue. The bed was 2 meters wide. There was clearly still a distance between the two of them, but Jianran felt that she was tightly surrounded by Qin Yue's male aura. I will sleep first. Good night. She quickly closed her eyes, hoping that she could fall asleep in the shortest possible time. The more Jianran did not let herself think, the more she thought in her mind. The more she slept, the more awake she became. She thought in her heart, would Qin Yue do something to her while she was sleeping? But on second thought, even if Qin Yue really wanted to do something to her, that was very normal. After all, she and him were already legal husband and wife. Jianran thought in her heart and her body became even more tense. She was almost in a stiff state. Perhaps because he sensed Jianran's nervousness, Qin Yue suddenly reached out and rubbed her head. Jianran, although we are legal husband and wife, I will not force you to do things that you are not willing to do. His voice was still as sexy and pleasant as usual, but Jianran vaguely felt that he was smiling. For a moment, even her ears turned red. Could this man not be so sensitive? With Qin Yue's assurance, Jianran's tense nerves slowly relaxed. Not long after, she fell asleep. When she woke up, the sky was already bright. Jianran grabbed the phone to look at the time. She could not help but exclaim in a low voice, It's over. From Monday to Friday morning at 7 o'clock, her alarm clock would definitely ring on time. Was it a strike today, or was she sleeping too soundly and did not hear it? You're awake. Qin Yue's low and sexy voice rang in the room. I saw that it was still early, so I turned off your alarm and let you sleep for a while longer. Jianran only realized that she was in the room when she heard Qin Yue's voice. There was another person. She looked up and saw the neatly dressed Qin Yue sitting on a single sofa. His slender fingers were casually flipping the newspaper in his hands. It seemed that he had been waiting for her for a long time. Wait for me for a while. I'll go make breakfast as soon as possible. Jianran scratched her head and jumped off the bed. She rushed into the bathroom in a panic. Breakfast is ready. I will wait for you to eat together. Qin Yu's low and deep voice came from behind. Jianran did not know how to react for a moment. He looked at Jianran's expression like a frightened rabbit. Qin Yu's sexy thin lips could not help but slightly raise. There was a smile in his cold eyes. Was this Jianran really the fierce girl who had been drunk and scolded him for 3 hours 3 years ago, and even vomited on his body? Jianran finished washing up and went to the restaurant. She had already changed into her work attire. She was wearing a white shirt and a short black skirt. The fitting cut outlined her perfect curves. She looked more mature than her real age. She was very sexy and had the charm of a woman. Seeing Jianran like this, Qin Yu's pupils shrank slightly. He secretly moved his gaze away and quietly sat down to eat breakfast. Therefore, after Qin Yu became the innovation technology CEO's first order was to change out of the company's female employee uniform and change the short skirt into pants. Seeing the exquisite and delicious breakfast on the table, Jianran smiled. These were all made by you? Last night, he even told her that he did not know how to cook and that he could make such delicious breakfast in one night. He was really omnipotent. Seeing what Jianran was thinking, Qin Yu passed the warm milk to her and said at the same time, "It was sent by the auntie at home." Qin Yu was a germaphobe and was especially picky about food. He usually did not eat outside, so the auntie, who had been in charge of his daily life since he was young, had made preparations in advance. It looks delicious. Jianran sat down and used her chopsticks to pick up the food. She took a bite and said, "It's really very delicious." The dessert melted immediately after entering her mouth and left a mouthful of fragrance. It was even more delicious than what she imagined. Yes. Qin Yu lightly hummed a syllable and did not respond. He looked very cold. Qin Yu did not answer and Jianran did not say anything else. She picked up another piece of snack and fed it to her mouth. After eating another piece of snack, Jianran quietly glanced at Qin Yu. She saw that he ate elegantly and could not help but think of the British aristocrats. He did not need to deliberately do anything. He would always unintentionally reveal an elegant and noble temperament. "There's something on my face?" Qin Yu suddenly spoke, his eyes filled with doubt. No. Jianran's face turned red again when she was discovered peeking. She quickly lowered her head to eat breakfast. "If you like this breakfast, I will make people prepare it this way in the future." After a long time, Qin Yu added another sentence. Jianran felt a little guilty. Actually, there is no need to go through so much trouble. Qin Yu put down his chopsticks and picked up a tissue to wipe his mouth. He lightly threw out a sentence. "You are my wife." "Oh, okay." Jianran did not refute anymore because Qin Yu's reason made her heart soften. She was his wife, he was her husband, and they were husband and wife, who would live the rest of their lives in the future. Jianran ate delicious desserts and drank warm milk. She could not help but think in her heart, God treated him well. He blocked the door to her happiness, but God still left a window for her. Chapter 6. The Cold CEO. Jianran had deeply experienced the horror of public opinion. If her colleagues in the company saw her coming to work in CEO's car, all kinds of rumors would probably smash her to death. So when Qin Yu asked her to take his car to work with him, she shook her head and refused without thinking. Although she did not take Qin Yu's car, the time they arrived at the company was about the same. Jianran and a group of people were waiting for the elevator. Qin Yu was also escorted by 2 special assistants to CEO's exclusive elevator. She originally wanted to pretend not to see him, but she felt that it was inappropriate, so she followed a group of people and politely greeted him. "Boss Qin, good morning." "Yes." "Okay," Qin Yu said indifferently. He glanced around and walked into the elevator, leaving everyone with a cold back view. Qin Yu's indifference did not dampen everyone's enthusiasm. They were all discussing this new CEO with enthusiasm. Jianran did not participate in the discussion, but she felt that it was somewhat funny in her heart. This man, Qin Yu, had a very clear attitude towards public and private matters. At this moment, she thought of an online word to describe Qin Yu: abstinence to lust, Prince Charming. As soon as she entered the company, Jianran completely forgot about her relationship with Qin Yu and devoted herself to her work. Recently, Jianran and a few colleagues from the same department were busy preparing for the recruitment of Starlight Company. Seeing that the bidding was about to start, Jianran's work also entered a state of anxiety. When she was busy, she was so busy that she did not even have time to eat lunch. In the company, Jianran was famous for being a workaholic. Busy work and not eating were common things, and no one really cared about her. However, today, Jianran received a call from Qin Yu when she was so busy that she forgot herself. Jianran looked around and saw that there was no one around. Then she carefully picked up the phone. "Is something the matter?" What she meant was that when they were at the company, he should not call her whenever he had nothing to do. He should not let others know about their relationship. Qin Yu obviously did not expect Jianran to say such a thing when she opened her mouth. He paused for a moment and then said, "Work is important, but you cannot be hungry." His voice was still faint, but it was not hard to tell that he cared about her. Jianran's face turned hot and said, "Yes, I know. Chinue did not speak again on the other side of the phone. Jianran did not know what else she could say. She said goodbye and hung up. On the other side, Chinue said at the last moment, I am in room 1808 of Lily Restaurant. Jianran nodded instinctively. Then you eat. I will not disturb you anymore. Jianran. Chinue's tone was obviously heavier. After a few seconds, he opened his mouth and said, I will wait for you. No need. Jianran instinctively wanted to refuse, but before she could say it, he hung up. Looking at the phone screen that had turned dark, Jianran frowned slightly. In the end, she sighed helplessly. What reason did she have to refuse to eat lunch with her newlywed husband? The Lily Hotel there was a 5-star restaurant near the company. It was expensive. Jianran usually did not come unless the company invited important customers. When they arrived at the Lily Hotel, Jianran was still thinking about not meeting any acquaintances, but she did not expect to bump into Chinue's special assistant, Xu Huiyi. Jianran wanted to pretend not to see her, but Xu Huiyi stopped her. Miss Jian, it was Boss Chin who asked me to come and pick you up. Jianran smiled awkwardly and quickly followed Xu Huiyi's footsteps. She and Chinue were clearly a legal couple, but now it gave people the feeling of having an affair. It was really embarrassing. When they arrived at private room 1808, Jianran saw another special assistant of Chinue, Liu Yong. Chinue took the initiative to get up and take Jianran's coat. He hung it on the clothing rack at the side and pulled a chair to let her sit down. He said, Miss Xu and Liu Yong have worked by my side for many years. They also know about our matters. Jianran nodded and did not say anything. She just looked at Xu Huiyi and Liu Yong a few more times. Liu Yong and Xu Huiyi politely nodded at her. Without saying anything, they left the private room in an orderly manner. Chinue personally served a bowl of soup to Jianran. All these years, I have also done some business, so I have some people with me. Hearing him take the initiative to explain, Jianran was very pleased in her heart and smiled shyly at him. Yes, I can understand. In the morning, the auntie at home made breakfast and sent it over. She also had capable people like Liu Yong and Xu Huiyi by her side. Chinue's background was probably far more complicated than she imagined. Jianran was unwilling to dig deeper. After all, she agreed to marry him. She only felt that this person looked not bad, and not because of his family background. Jianran did not ask much, and Chinue did not say much either. The two of them quietly ate. Furthermore, Chinue had received a family education since he was young that he did not eat or sleep. He was also not used to talking at the dining table. This meal was very quiet again. When both of them put down their chopsticks, Chinue said lightly, In the future, no matter how busy you are at work, you can't not eat. Jianran nodded. I will pay attention. Hearing her perfunctory answer, Chinue's eyes under the golden frame darkened. Clearly, he was not satisfied and said, In the future, you can have lunch with me at noon. Chinue's tone was a little overbearing, but Jianran did not hate it. She looked up and smiled at him. Thank you for Boss Chin's concern, but... Boss Chin? Chinue raised his eyebrows. Since you called me Boss Chin, do you want to listen to what this new CEO said to you? This man had used his identity to pressure her so quickly. Jianran had been in the innovation technology company's sales department for 3 years. She was usually a smart and alert person, but now she really did not know how to deal with Chinue. Chinue seized the opportunity and continued. Then it's decided. Jianran did not want to have this kind of meeting with Chinue at noon every day, but she could not find an excuse to refuse, so she could only nod and agree. She even found a reason that was so pale that it could not be any paler and hastily ran away. Seeing Jianran's hasty fleeing back, Chinue's eyes darkened slightly. His slender fingers subconsciously tapped on the table as if he was planning something. Young master? A woman who looked to be in her 40s or 50s knocked on the door and interrupted Chinue's thoughts. Chinue looked up, and his eyes were cold as usual. What's the matter? The woman said. Are these dishes suitable for your appetite? Chinue was a little germaphobe, so he hardly ate outside. However, this Lily Hotel was his property. The 1808 elegant private room was specially prepared for him according to his preference. Naturally, there were people who prepared his food for him alone. This woman was responsible for Chinue's diet since he was young. She was the one who knew Chinue's taste the best. In the future, prepare 2 Sichuan dishes for each meal. Don't add spicy dishes. Chinue did not answer, but gave another order. His diet was light, but Jianran was very spicy. She had never told him these things, but Chinue knew them.